When we talk about a staff shakeup, is that still in the works, Doctor?
We're going to certainly be altering some things in the campaign, and we will be talking about that quite publicly next week.
Well, more like this week, because he was good on it. Ben Carson and his campaign manager, another aide, out. Obviously, a lot of people are saying that this has to do with his drop in the polls. Craig Robinson is the editor-in-chief of the Iowa Republican. I guess the question is whether this is going to make a difference. This had been well telegraphed, but it was almost like the sword of Damocles here. It was dragged out, and I wonder if that helps or hurts him. What do you think?
Well, I definitely don't think it helps. I mean, we're in the final moments before we actually start the voting process in Iowa, and so you really have to have things in place now to enact them by the time February 1st rolls around. So I think any sort of shakeup like this is problematic for any campaign and any place if it's, a front runner or if you're back in the pack.
All right, now other campaigns have shaken up their staffs. John McCain's comes to mind. But, of course, it was just done. There was no preview to it. It was done, and it was abrupt. But it did have it did do the magic trick, and it turned things around for him. We're told that these two campaign officials who left, the manager and the communications director, were urging Dr. Carson to get, for lack of a better word, more in your face to criticism, especially from the likes of Donald Trump and others who say that he's clueless on foreign policy, that, in other words, he has to up the octane. Now, when I talked to Dr. Carson, he had said that it's not his style. If you want him to be a negative politician, he's the wrong guy. So what happens, Craig?
Well, I think that was bad advice. I mean, frankly, instead of getting, in another candidate's face, he should get to Iowa. This is someone who, when he surged in the polls this fall in Iowa and was one of the front runners here, he was nowhere to be found. And you have to strike when the iron's hot. And we've seen candidates time and time again not do that. And so, I think that, everyone tries to manage and figure out how they can combat, maybe the more boisterous candidates in this race. But be who you are, but be here, be on the ground in these early states, because ultimately that's what matters more than anything else.
But he's having no trouble raising money, right? He's coming off a 3-month period, the final quarter figures, not all dotted and T's crossed, but it looks like $23 million more than anyone else. So he seems to be just raising money like it's nobody's business, but not polling that well. How do you explain that disconnect?
Well, I think that, you have a lot of these candidates who are able to raise small grassroots contributions, and there's a real focus on that. Now, sometimes that can cost you an awful lot of money to raise those dollars. So you're raising money, but you're spending a lot of money to raise it. But still, I mean, his fundraising numbers are very impressive, and it's unfortunate that there's not a connection between his fundraising ability and his abilities as a candidate. And I think part of that is because he's not on the ground in these early states in Iowa.
Well,
I mean,
no, you're right. But that does seem to be a bit of a trend. Jeb Bush has pulled back a lot of his commitments, advertising and others, in the state. I know you've expressed concern about other candidates who sort of pull back. Maybe that's a post-Ted Cruz phenomenon that he's surging in the state. It's his to lose. Who knows? The caucuses are very hard to gauge, especially yours. But what do you make of that?
Well, I think you got to be here to win.
Obviously. What do you make of that? That candidates are reassessing Iowa, and some others who feel that it's Ted Cruz to lose are focusing on New Hampshire and elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that kind of mindset. I was out on the campaign trail yesterday watching Marco Rubio and Chris Christie campaign in the state. And I thought both of them, there was some energy there. There were good crowds there. And while they might not have enough to actually be the ultimate winner in Iowa, I think what happens in Iowa is really going to have an impact on New Hampshire and the other states moving forward. And so that Iowa is important. Not just, you don't just need to win it, But in a field this large with such a diverse field of candidates, I think where you finish in your own heat, if you're an establishment candidate or a mainstream candidate, I think there's a race within this race. And that's why it's important to be engaged in a state like Iowa early on and have a good finish here, because it's going to help you in New Hampshire.
Craig, very good having you. Happy New Year to you. Be safe. Be well.
Happy New Year, Neil.
All right, Craig Robinson.